Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of SportsVoice. As you can see, we got a new regime here hosting SportsVoice. It's no longer Sammy and Claire. My name is Calvin Kaplan. I'm here alongside Pierson Strandquist, and this, as always, is going to be an electric episode of SportsVoice. We got three awesome guests, Jonah, Tomas, and Matt. Guys, great to have you here. Pierson, great to have you as well. I mean, I'm really looking forward to co-hosting with you for this next year.
Dude, it's going to be so incredibly hyped, and we are so happy to have these three guests here, kind of Sports Voice regulars from the past, and hopefully Sports Voice regulars now that we're hosting. And so we're just going to start off right away. So I hope y'all are doing well, and we're just going to start off with the question of the week. This is a new segment that we came up with. We'll have more formal branding and maybe some theme song for that later on. But we'll just get right into it. So first off, what is your boldest prediction for Northwestern Athletics in 2025? We'll start with Matt and go down the line.
Okay, so last time I talked about an NCAA tournament, I made a pretty bad prediction about a certain basketball team making a certain Final Four. I did get three of them right.
What was the other one, Matt?
Northwestern. They got bounced pretty early in the Big Ten tournament and then didn't accept an at-large bid at all. But I returned to the NCAA tournament. Instead, I go to the world of softball, and I say Northwestern softball will be NCAA champions in the year of 2025. And I know you look at this season, Northwestern softball is not particularly good, only 2 wins in 10 games against ranked opponents, but they've weathered an early storm. This Northwestern team was below 500 at the end of the first month, and they were able to weather that. Kaylee Abasado, Grace Nito were able to pull the offense out of this rut. So you can see that this team is battle tested. They're essentially going to be returning the same lineup next year. 5 players right now are hitting above the 300 mark as it stands after today. And we've seen some struggles in the infield, short, third, and second base, all leading the team, all ranking the top 3 in errors, and we'll get to that. I'll get to that a little bit later when we talk softball. But I think this is really an experimental year for the Dro hands with the addition of Abasado in the infield and a returning Grace Nito to the lineup, shaking things up. So I feel like that'll be hashed out next year. Grutzelanek will inherit the number 1 spot, and I feel like she'll do well in that. And the only thing that this team needs is a defined number 2, which kind of was up in the air after Ashley Miller graduated last season. But I feel like Signe Dose could fill that role. Emma Blake could fill that role. Worst case scenario, Northwestern goes into the transfer portal. But I feel like this team is really a national championship contender. Maybe not so much this year, considering their success against ranked opponents thus far has not really been there. But next season, more experienced first years turning into sophomores, more experienced pitching staff. I think Northwestern has a shot at making a good run.
I will go basketball, and I'm gonna, talk a little transfer portal. So, the Wildcats so far in men's basketball, a somewhat slow transfer portal, but Chris Collins getting re-signed was huge, and the addition of Jane Reed, pretty important. The Cats have to get a center. Gabe Dines being currently the biggest prospect, of course, he has other offers, and as the days go on, it's becoming less and less likely, but it's still on the table. And then, you've got a couple guards, Max Green, Sam Brown. I will say that the Wildcats do get their guy in Gabe Dines, and I will say they get either Max Green or Sam Brown to add to the backcourt, adding 3 quality transfers around Nick Martinelli, who I will predict will return for the Northwestern Wildcats for his senior year. And, this kind of, I guess, gets into 2025, 2026. But looking further along, I think they get, some great targets in the transfer portal, and Northwestern has an NCAA tournament caliber squad going into the next season. Of course, the season has a lot of ups and downs. You can't really predict what will happen this early on. But I think going into it, they'll be, Northwestern is usually not predicted to go very high when you ask the experts, but I think they'll have the quality there to be, in that conversation.
I'll go over to the gridiron. I think that in this possible final year of David Braun, he's looking for a bounce back after this very disappointing season. And I think that the Wildcats will make a bowl game, and I think that they'll win 7 games. I don't know where these wins are going to come from, but the Wildcats are going to find a way because that's just what they do at this school. They find a way. And I think they've made some really good additions in the portal, O-line, tight end, D-line, linebacker. And while there are still some weak spots on this roster, I think that, well, specifically the transfer I didn't mention at quarterback Preston Stone, I think he'll be the big step up that they needed from last year to be able to carry them to a bowl game, and we'll see from there.
Yeah, I'm usually an optimist, bro. I'm usually an optimist, but I do not see 7 wins on this schedule. I'm gonna be honest. This team plays Oregon. This team plays Penn State. This team plays Nebraska, USC. They play Illinois at the end of the season. I do not see 5. I do not see more than 6 wins on this schedule. No shot.
Thank you, Ben.
I'm just saying. It's
bold.
a bold
It's
prediction,
bold.
but I'm
It's
just
supposed to
saying.
be bold. It's supposed to be bold.
Well, yeah, I mean, good to hear from all you guys. Obviously, bold predictions, all sorts of wide variety of sports, which is good to hear as well. We're going to go into the next segment of the day. We got national sports talk for Northwestern, and I mean, Pierson, there's so much to talk about. There's so much that we have to catch up for. We're going to try to give a little sum up of what happened since the last time we had Sports Voice, and then talk about really the main results, core results from this week. Starting with lacrosse. As we know, Northwestern, they fell to number 6 in lacrosse over the break. They had the big loss to number 2 North Carolina, a heartbreaker, 15-12. Could not handle the Humphrey sisters in that game, could not stop UNC's potent offense. But then they got a couple ranked wins. They beat number 18 USC. They beat number 4 Johns Hopkins by a score of 18-5. Just an unbelievable result. 2 ranked wins in a row. And then, as expected, a 15-6 win over Rutgers. We had Maddie Taylor with 5 goals in that game. Nikki Miles, Lucy Monroe, Sam Smith with 2 apiece. The Cats also won the draw control battle in that game, 17-7. The question is, now, does Northwestern have a chance to make their trademark deep run of the past? And this is Pierson's idea. Pierson put this together here on the rundown. Since the bunnies are multiplying around campus around springtime, they are prevalent around this time of year. It's time to hop, H-O-P, meaning half full, optimist, and pessimist. We're going to randomly assign each of you one of those positions, so be ready to talk from any perspective. For the glass half full perspective for Northwestern lacrosse, you're going to argue that the Big Ten tourney will be a cakewalk, but a national exit is imminent, and tell us what will be their downfall. For the optimists, we're going all the way. Why are the Cats a legit contender in the Big Ten and the national championship? And the pessimist thinks that in the Izzy Scanless world, the Cats might not even win the Big Ten tourney. I see, Pierson, you got a random number generator. You want to end up picking who we go with first here?
Yeah, so we're going to start with the pessimist. Just do 1 through 3. Matt's 1, Tomas is 2, Jonah is 3. And it's going to be Tomas. You're going to be the pessimist. Then for the optimist, we are going to have Matt, which means that Jonah, you're the half full, half empty. So quickly get your answers together, but I think we're just going to start off right away with Jonah. So give us your H.
What we've seen from this Northwestern lacrosse team in, of course, the Izzy Scanless year has been both, I'd say a bit up and down, but mostly up. We've seen some dominating wins over top 5 teams and a lot of ranked teams throughout the year. I think it's the biggest downfall of this team, regardless of who it comes to, is just a team that is able to outscore them, even though Northwestern has a great defense. Like, they've lost to the top 2 teams in the country, and it seems like that unless something drastic changes within this team, they won't be able to make it past those top 2 teams, and it's possible that someone else in the tournament, though it seems like they've beaten most of the Big Ten, someone else in the NCAA tournament could make a sneaky run against them, and that will be their downfall. But I think they will very likely cruise through the rest of their schedule and through the Big Ten tournament.
Okay, Tomas.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they've had some good wins, but you look at how they fared against, really elite competition. I'm talking about, Boston College and North Carolina, losing both of those games. And the thing is, this team, they're so reliant on Maddie Taylor, now without Izzy Skane. Taylor has 89 points. The next closest player is Nikki Miles with 39. That's less than half of Taylor's output. And whenever you rely that much on one single player, it's a recipe for disaster. I just, looking at the numbers, right? Yes, they're still by far, a great lacrosse team, but I think certainly going all the way is a bit of a stretch looking at these more complete teams. And even you look at the Big Ten, yes, Northwestern did come out with a big win against Johns Hopkins, I will say, but the Big Ten is not a walk in the park. You have a lot of teams that are top ranked. They'll be facing off against Michigan, which is another ranked team pretty soon here in Evanston. So we'll see how they fare there. But even in the Big Ten, it's not a given. Not in like years past where Northwestern was essentially locked in to be a Big Ten champion. just don't think it's that certain nowadays.
All right, and then we got Matt, last but not least.
I cannot believe that you just gave Tomas the unfortunate responsibility of arguing that Northwestern is not going to win the Big Ten tournament because this team is undefeated in the Big Ten. No Big Ten team has a... Madison Taylor, as Tomas just established, is the scouting report for every single Big Ten team and actually every single team on this roster. No team has stopped Madison Taylor except for North Carolina and Boston College, obviously. But to be fair, Boston College was fairly early in the season. It was a matchup of 1 versus 2, and I feel like Northwestern got out of the blocks pretty slow in that game. They hadn't scored much in the first half, but that third quarter, I think that's the golden. I think that's one of Northwestern's best quarters from throughout the season, and they've taken that style of play and they've just copied and pasted it throughout every single game, and that's why you have these blowouts against Colorado. That's why they beat Syracuse in the Dome. That's why they blew out Penn State, Maryland, and most recently USC. I think this team, relying on Madison Taylor, is not necessarily a bad thing. She's far and away the Tewaaraton winner, and it's not even going to be close. But like Tomas said, yes, you have these issues, but I feel like the number 2 is a revolving door, and it depends on the day. Sometimes it's Riley Campbell, sometimes it's Emerson Bowling, sometimes it's Nikki Miles. It just depends on who's doubling Taylor and who ends up having that day. So Northwestern, there's nothing to worry about. Madison Taylor is going to go to the Big Ten tournament, get hers. National tournament, she might slow down a little bit, but somebody else is eventually going to step up. And I feel like we will find out a definitive number 2 come the NCAA tournament, and I feel like it's going to be between Emerson Bowling and Riley Campbell. We'll see.
I like that, Matt. I mean, obviously, we kind of forced y'all to give some opinions you probably don't agree on. Of course, probably all 5 of us think that Northwestern will go all the way, or at least will have a really strong shot at it. Obviously, the 2 teams they lost to, being North Carolina and Boston College, that kind of makes it a little bit troublesome. But at the same time, I agree with Matt. I think this team could have what it takes, and we'll see. So with that being said, we've talked enough about lacrosse, kind of a little bit structured, so we're going to give a little more open, be able to say what you want. We're going to start with the diamond sports. So first with baseball. Obviously, earlier on in the week, they had a big walk-off win, Trent Loyolis, 2-1, at USC. It was a Chicago battle, and then served some what we call deep dish revenge here. A 5-2 loss against USC earlier in the season, built some momentum after Maryland. And then a follow-up, it was 2 fat L's, Calvin. 2 terrible losses to Iowa, where it looked really bad coming into today. But fear not, Northwestern was able to walk it off once again. A final 5-4 against the leaders in the Big Ten. What a huge one. The second walk-off of the season for Kucherak. And now Iowa's 12-3 in conference play. So, their 10-game winning streak was snapped. This was huge for Northwestern, and it was less than ideal for Iowa. So, in terms of just the future of Northwestern baseball, where do y'all see them playing? They've had inconsistency, but they do stand at 500. That's much better in conference play than they have been in the past. Had some really good wins this year. They've already exceeded their conference record and their overall record. So with the conference schedule expanded with 18 teams this season, how many wins do you think they'll end up with, and what do you think their future is?
Okay, so as it stands, they're 8 and... Actually, no. Give me 1 second, because I know that the Big Ten statistics don't update, but I believe they stand at 500 in conference play. Yes, they do, and so that puts them in the middle of the pack. I believe the Big Ten. I don't know how they refine the Big Ten baseball tournament, but it's usually every 8 teams that go to Charles Schwab Field. Do I have that right? Yeah.
I think it's yeah.
So 8 teams. So that puts Northwestern on the fringe. And snapping Iowa's 10-game losing streak is huge, because if you think back to 2017, the last time Northwestern was in the Big Ten tournament, they went to the finals. Who did they lose to? Iowa. So I feel like that's huge. And the rest of this Big Ten schedule is not that great. Michigan State, middle of the pack team. Nebraska, middle of the pack team. Washington, middle of the pack team. Purdue, also a middle of the pack team. So I feel like with the amount of momentum that Northwestern has had coming off series wins against Illinois and Maryland, I think Northwestern can finish a couple of games above 500, and then they'll find themselves in the tournament picture, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this kind of win, it's a huge momentum shifter for you as a team. I still don't think that, Northwestern is going to be, in the cream of the crop of the Big Ten, but I certainly think they have a good shot at finishing above 500 in these 30 games, maybe 16, 17, 18 wins. And these are quality wins. You look at the Illinois series win. Illinois is a team that's, above 500 in conference play, right? It's not like, they're beating teams that are in the basement of the conference. So I think that overall, Northwestern is showing a lot of signs of growth as a program. And if you think of it a little more big picture, right, especially considering recent seasons, last season in particular, it is very encouraging to see a Northwestern team that is competitive, especially in this expanded Big Ten. And I think while they're not going to be a powerhouse anytime soon, I think they can and will be a competitive team that's making a Big Ten tournament. And yeah, who knows? Maybe they'll cause some trouble in the postseason with a surprising result or two.
And yeah, I mean, I like that y'all are talking about kind of this idea of competitiveness, but does that mean consistency, right? I think that's the biggest question here for Northwestern is they can clearly play well at their top, and they can play well this season, but the question is, can they do next season? BG is the first head coach in 4 years to not get fired after his first season, and obviously this season looks like he'll be safe in terms of his job, not on the hot stove. But at the same time, it's how can they, with turnover of players, of their leaders leaving the team as seniors, how can they stay consistent? So, I mean, John, I'll let you take that. What do you think the biggest thing is?
I mean, I think a lot of what we've seen this season, they have had a lot of issues with pitching, and that's why we see games like they had two of against Iowa this weekend where they were not close. And some of their wins have come in these very tight situations. Even though they did get the win today on the walk-off, it's still, taking leads and giving them back. So I think looking, future of this season, I think it'll come down to their final series against UCLA, who's now at the top of the Big Ten. And depending on how they fare there, I think will determine if they make the Big Ten tournament or where they'll get seeded. And looking to the future, I think you're right, Pierson. Just consistency is going to be key, and that they're going to have to find some rudimentary structure within the roster that isn't just a couple guys can hit a home run once every 5 days and they'll win that one game. That they need some consistent hitting and also bring in possibly some pitchers.
Well, I mean, you're right about consistency for sure, Jonah, and all of these things that Northwestern, they have to
work on throughout this, throughout this season with baseball applies similarly to the other major diamond sport here, softball. Northwestern has started off conference play really, really well overall. We'll recap what they did in general. I mean, they had, as we know, a very disappointing start to the season record-wise, but came into conference play, did super well. They played Notre Dame, ended up tying for what I believe was just the second time in Cade Drohan's career due to darkness. It was a 10-10 final, grand slam by Kansas Robinson in the twilight right before the sun set. I mean, as the sun was setting, it was getting darker and darker, and then they called the game shortly after that. So, I mean, that's not only something rare, but then huge rivalry matchup against Illinois. Obviously, we saw a doubleheader today on Sunday, as well as a big-time win yesterday, 4-3 for Northwestern. They came in on Sunday, had a tough 1-2 loss. That's a team in Illinois that the Cats should beat. Obviously, they ended up winning the series, getting an 8-2 victory in Game 2 of that doubleheader, Game 3 of the series. But I do want to hear your guys' thoughts, specifically on someone like Kansas Robinson, because I mentioned the grand slam that she hit against Notre Dame. That was huge. But she's someone who struggled to start the season, but has really bounced back in the last few games. What do you guys think has been the key to her success and the key to the team's success? Because they're now 9-1 in conference play, looking a lot better than they were a month ago.
As a team, you can see that they're putting together quality at-bats up and down the order. If you go to a Northwestern softball game, you have to count on two hands how many quality at-bats that you'll see in a particular game, which is a very, very good sight to see. Names like Robinson, of course, but I think of Abasado, I think of Grace Nito at the top of the order, I think of Emma Ray batting sixth. So Northwestern is seeing the ball well at the plate, and you can see these defined roles. Northwestern is kind of redefining themselves as a team. Robinson being the RBI hitter in the 3-hole. Richard Donahue, power production, leads the team in homers. Emma Ray, Izzy Kania both provide consistency towards the bottom of the order. And then you got Kaylee Abasato and Kelsey Nader, who kind of just do everything. They're anomalies. So this team has done a really good job at kind of just reconstructing the lineup, and that's also in part to the Dro Hands doing some lineup tinkering throughout the season, trying to see what works and what doesn't work. I also feel like there's some tinkering that we could be done on the defensive side, but I'll get to that in a minute. But to keep it positive, the offense has just been redefining itself as the season's gone on, and it's worked.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think this turnaround, for the reigning Big Ten champions has really been quite admirable, especially you look at the standings, and it looks kind of funny because Northwestern, Oregon, and UCLA are all tied at the top at 9-1. But then you look at their overall records. Oregon is 35-3. UCLA is 36-5. Northwestern is 20-12-1, which, is holding onto itself. But 20-12, right? Like, that is a solid, 15 losses less than the other two teams. Or 15 wins less, I should say, than the other two teams. So they've managed to, despite a really rocky start to the season, in conference play, they are still at that elite level of play. And, in a sport like softball, momentum is so important. So in a way, you almost rather that they started out like that if it meant that they would be able to correct those mistakes and now really take in a lot of momentum into conference play and hopefully keep building it on that as we enter the second half of the season.
Take into account that Northwestern does have the toughest schedule in the
that
Big
too.
Ten
That too.
as well.
Yes.
Yeah, as we brought up, the turnaround that we've seen from Kansas Robinson, 16 hits in her first 20 games or so, and now 12 in her last 6, is just insane to see. I was at the doubleheader today, doing some reporting, and I saw just, as Matt said, great at-bats, really good pitching across the 2 games, not giving up easy opportunities, and I think just if they can keep that up, which it looks like they've been very consistent over their past 10 games. I saw 7-2-1. Like, if that is the trend for the season going forward, I see no reason why they can't repeat success from previous years.
Before we, are we getting off the topic of softball?
Go for it.
Go for it, yeah.
Well, I gotta get this off my chest, guys, because this really grinds my gears. And I know we're talking offense, but I want to move to the defense because I know I mentioned I wanted some lineup tinkering, and this is what grinds my gears, and I think this might be Northwestern's downfall. Northwestern should still be undefeated in conference play. Bridget Donahue made a really, really unnecessary error late in Game 1 today that did not need to be made. A bunt down the third baseline, Donahue bare hands it and throws it to first on a play where she doesn't need to make that throw, and she's consistently done that from the third base position. Donahue leads the team with 13 errors thus far. Last season, she had 5 from shortstop. Who's number 2? Kaylee Abasato with 11, playing the shortstop role. You see where I'm going with this? Because Abasato coming in, the expectation was she'd just slot in at third base, fill the void, and then everything would go back to normal. But no. The Dro Hands did some lineup tinkering in the beginning of the season, and Abasato ended up being the starting shortstop from day 1, sliding Donahue over to third, and I don't think it's working. I think it's too much pressure for Abasato at short. I think it's too much for Donahue to learn a new position this late into her career. So here's what I propose. Aisley Mino has only started 1 game this season, and she was the consistent first baseman last season. I say Mino should come in and play first. That will slide Robinson back to second. What happens to Nito? I think Nito should go to third. I think Donahue should go back to short. I think Abasato right now needs to play the designated player position, something that's also been a revolving door for Northwestern. It's kind of been between Dose and Grudzelanek and Ayanna Lindsay and, whoever needs an off day on any given day. But I think Abasato should just focus on the offensive side because they obviously need that production. And obviously the thing that comes up, maybe one argument that comes up is, what if she gets Rafael Devers in? What I mean by that, if you don't understand, is Rafael Devers started off for the Red Sox as a designated hitter and went for his first 19 to start off the season. He sucked.
Red Sox fans will say we sucked.
But what I say to that is, we're in the midst of the season. Abasato seeing the ball well from the plate. I don't think that messes with her psyche at all. She's in the flow of things. I think right now she cannot handle short. I think if you want to fill up third base, Grace Nito's toughness is characteristic for that. I think Donahue going back to short puts her in her habitat more, and I think Northwestern defense is better off.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because recently Kaylee Avasado was named a top 15 shortstop in the country, but to your point, it's mostly because of her offensive production, right? Not necessarily her defense. I think they could definitely switch some things around. I mean, it's kind of mid-season. It's hard to know like where that necessarily will come from if they can do that successfully without hurting rhythm. That's kind of what you're saying. So I think it remains to be seen. I think that's a good idea. And I think that hopefully, the Giants are listening to you, Matt Campbell, and we'll take this feedback because I definitely agree. And so finally moving on really quickly before we go to Pick'em, just some quick men's and women's basketball stuff. We'll definitely talk more about this next week when we have more clarity on some people's status. Number one thing, recently announced that Joe McEwen will be retiring after next season. We don't know what his successor is, but he had a long tenure at Northwestern, marked by steady improvement and then a sharp decline these past few years, unfortunately. But even still, we saw the program's first NCAA tournament win in 28 years in the team's remarkable 2021 season and a tournament run. So, I mean, we'll see how the team will fare. But I guess in terms of that, and then obviously also the news of Chris Collins staying, which I know we're all happy about, kind of like describe both of their tenures just with one word for each coach. Just describe it. What is their tenure at the Wildcat? What does it mean to you? Let's limit responses to like 15 seconds.
I'd say for Joe McEwen community, I feel like every player that played under him and all of his assistant coaches just were such a huge fan of him, and he's like such an integral part of this program. For Collins, I'd say future, like he's brought so much success that the program has never seen before, and now that he's extended and NIL coming with him, transfers, new great recruiting class, we'll see what they can do.
For McEwen, I'll go with continuity. He was just such an ever-present figure for Northwestern women's basketball and just really brought, a lot of stability to that program. And for Coach Collins, I'm gonna go with establishment. And what I mean by that is it really established Northwestern basketball, men's basketball, as a program that should be respected. And, before him, Northwestern was the only team in a power conference that had never made men's March Madness. So I think that, that was just a huge moment for the Cats.
For McEwen, I'm going to go with generational because he took a women's basketball program that was bottom of the barrel, came in and made them one of the best basketball programs we've ever seen in the country relative to the 21st century. And for Collins, I'm going to say loyalty. He's an Evanston guy. He was Illinois' Mr. Basketball, stays home and has a rough season, and he could easily go to Villanova. The grass seems greener on the other side, but the loyalty keeps him here, and he signs a contract extension through 2030. If there's anything that screams loyalty, it's got to be that.
Well, I mean, good answers from all of you. And yeah, like we said, more basketball talk to come. Obviously, there's so much that we missed, but with transfers still coming in for Northwestern men's basketball in particular, we'll wait to talk about some of the news. Obviously, we know someone like Jaden Reed, the guard from South Florida, transferred into Northwestern. He might have an impact. You're going to hear a ton about that in future weeks. But it's time for the first pick'em of Pierson and I's new tenure. We got 3 great questions for you here. Really gave long and hard thinking to all of these, I think. And we're going to go straight into it, and obviously we're going to vote on the winners. If you've heard Sports Voice before, pick 'em. We're going to ask a question. Each person here is going to give an answer, each guest, and we're going to vote on who we think is best at the end. So it's a long-time Sports Voice tradition. Of course, going to continue it better than ever. We'll start with question 1, and Pierson, since you wrote questions 2 and 3, I'll let you go with those, but I'll go out. This is my question that I wrote for pick 'em. Question 1. It's about March Madness, sort of. March Madness is always a time for upsets, except for this year, where there were all 4 1 seeds in the Final Four. But usually it's a time for upsets, and over the past few seasons, we've seen so many breakout stars like Jack Golke and Doug Eddert shock the basketball world with their sudden prowess. I wouldn't say someone like Walter Clayton Jr. this year qualifies as a Cinderella star, but, think Cinderella stars here for this question. We need you to give us a player from your favorite team in any sport and justify why they exemplify the idea of a March Madness hero. We'll start with Matt first, and then we'll go the other way for the next question.
Calvin, I think you're going to like this one. And I did not pick this to suck up to the host. I think this is genuinely one of my favorite teams ever. From the 2018 World Series champion Washington Nationals, I went with the ripe 20-year-old Juan Soto. When you think of Cinderella teams, when you think of Cinderella stars throughout March Madness, you think of scrappiness, you think of confidence, you think of young guys who have something to prove. And if that doesn't embody a 20-year-old Juan Soto who's looking for a major contract extension, I don't know what does. This guy came into the playoffs with this patented Soto shuffle and it was just mocking the pitchers with actions I cannot depict on the radio due to, profanity and kind of just like unprofessionalism. But he was not afraid to break an unwritten rule. Like this guy had a legendary face-off with Zach Greinke in the World Series, just trolling the crap out of him, proceeded to hit a home run, and then had a kind of bat drop-off between himself and Alex Bregman that kind of went mainstream. And he backs up his confidence/arrogance at the plate, confidence, arrogance, depending on who you talk to, whether it's one of us or it's somebody older that believes in the traditional baseball rules. But when you think of somebody that embodies the spirit of a March Madness team, of a March Madness Cinderella player, I think it's that specific iteration of Juan Soto.
Matt, respect for that. Obviously as a Yankees fan, I wouldn't think that you would have picked Juan Soto just because there's probably some bad blood there. But yeah, that's a really good answer. So Tomas, can you follow it up?
Yeah, so while I am going to go with a player that actually did play in March Madness, it has nothing to do with his time in college. I'm going to go with Kobe White, specifically from this past month. Because, as you may know, he was the Kia Eastern Conference Player of the Month, which might not seem like a huge accolade, but the only Bulls to have won that since Michael Jordan are Derrick Rose, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan.
Those seem like pretty cool guys to us.
Yeah, they do seem like pretty cool guys. But that's it. So the list is very short. The only real, players that seem to win that are like bona fide all-stars, right? So for Kobe White to go and do that is pretty impressive, and he's been balling out of his mind lately. The Bulls are 12-4 in their past 16 after defeating the Charlotte Hornets earlier today. And for a player who averaged under 10 points per game in 2022-23, he averaged 19 last year. He's now up to 20.5 on the season this year. And he's really just been a player who, a lot of people were saying maybe the Bulls should trade him. He's not, that valuable. But he's really proven, especially after this trade deadline when there was a lot of buzz about it, he's really proven to the organization that he can be that guy, and he is, really a cornerstone of your franchise. Maybe not a superstar, but certainly a very, very valuable piece that any basketball team would love to have. So I would say current Kobe White, and what really inspired me specifically for this, thinking March Madness, is that game against the Lakers, the buzzer beater, Josh Giddey hits the half-court buzzer beater, but Kobe White is the one who made the three-pointer before that to get the Bulls in that position in the first place. So, really that game itself seemed like a March Madness game. So, yeah, I got to go with Kobe White.
Man, he was robbed of most improved player, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I like how both of these answers stick to the Sports Voice tradition of sucking up to the hosts and picking to their favorite teams, because Pierson, of course, a Bulls fan. I'm a huge DC Sports Nats fan. We'll see if Jonah tried something similar. What do you got for us, Jonah?
Unfortunately, I couldn't pick a player that played for both teams that you guys support, but I'm going to pick a player from one of my favorite teams ever, the 2018 Bears, who had arguably one of the greatest defenses of the 21st century. But I'm not going to pick one of the top players like Leonard Floyd, Khalil Mack. Danny Trevathan, sixth round pick, second most tackles on the team, second to Roquan Smith. What a cornerstone player that forgotten, coming out of the 6th round, which you wouldn't expect from all these guys that are first-round picks on this team, making a huge impact. I think that's just the embodiment of March Madness, is underdog stories. So, despite where this team ended up in the playoffs and what happened to this defense after that, I think Danny Trevathan is an exemplary example of March Madness in a different sport.
That is exemplary indeed, and I have to say, Calvin, first show and I get 2 suck-ups to your 1, I'll take that for sure.
But it helps that you've got 2
Chicago
Chicago
It does help that I have 2
fans
Chicago sports fans here, and all the power to us. But we're going to move on to the second question. We're going to give all of our votes at the end, but this one's a shorter one. So excluding existing themes or like the YMCA's of the sports world, like the Hot to Go's, blah blah blah. Pick one song from your playlist, your Spotify, your Apple Music, your I guess Pandora if you're like LeBron. SoundCloud, whatever you want. Just pick a song that matches the aura of your favorite sports moment. Tell us what that sports moment is and tell us why you think it matches. So we're gonna start with Jonah and then go back. Oh,
He's ready.
okay, Matt's ready. We can go with Matt.
I've been ready. All right, we're going to stay in 2018 for this one. The moment that I picked was the first ever 16/81 the UMBC upset over Virginia. This was a point that I talked about a couple of shows ago with Sammy and Claire and But
Rest
They're
in
not
peace.
dead.
They
They're not
haven't
dead.
passed away. They're still alive. I think they're listening to the show.
but yeah. So to give a little context, 2024 beef of the year. What was it? Drake versus Kendrick.
Yep.
And going into it, everybody thought, yeah, Drake is going to squash Kendrick. Kendrick's not as big. Yeah, Kendrick doesn't have a chance. Kendrick beat the crap out of Drake. Literally.
Yeah.
Going into this game, Virginia was expected to wipe the floor with UMBC. What does UMBC do? UMBC absolutely kills Virginia with the 3-ball. Not Like Us is an upbeat song that it's kind of like a victory rap. It's something that like. When Kendrick released that song, it was a way for him to say, yo, I'm better than you. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. I don't care that you squashed Meek Mill a couple of years ago in your little rap beef. I'm so much better than you because you suck. UMBC comes in with the same kind of attitude, and I feel like that song just fits that moment so perfectly. The way that they come in, they don't care about Virginia and the crazy run that they had. They come in, they play their style of basketball, they kill them with the 3-ball, and then by the end of 40 minutes, Virginia's off. Virginia's back off to the East Coast.
I like that. That's very. That's a real. You're right. That is like a perfect comparison. Tomas, we're gonna skip over you and come back to you. We're gonna go to Jonah. So go ahead.
Okay. The moment I'm gonna go with is the Cubs winning the World Series in 2016. I feel like that is just a moment that will stick with me forever. And the song I'm gonna go with is "Forever" by Drake, Kanye, Lil Wayne, and Eminem.
More Drake. Okay. Drake related.
If we think about these bars, it may not mean nothing to y'all. Other people don't understand the value of that one World Series ring. Other teams.
That's not the next line after it may mean nothing to y'all.
We're not gonna. I'm gonna do some selective reading here. But if you got other teams like, for example, like the Yankees that have 27 rings, that one ring might not mean that much. But to me and other millions of other Chicago sports fans, it meant so much. And at a bar later is, I want this blank forever, because that I will hold that ring
What's
towards.
the blank?
I don't think I can say it.
Like what is your version of the blank?
The ring.
Crap. Stuff. Things.
No,
like
what
what
is
you
the
in the
thing
context
that
of
you're
the
holding
question.
forever is what he's
Oh.
asking.
Yeah, like what
The
do you
ring.
want? What do you
The
want
wor-
forever?
my imaginary World Series ring that I hold true as a fan that I give myself as being a fan of this team that has not won in so long.
You know, Jonah. Do you know Wayne Mesmer, the guy who sings like the
Yes.
national anthem at Cubs games? I think he might have been there today, Tomas. I don't know if that's true. I met him and I saw he got a World Series ring. So I am a proud wearer of a World Series ring when I was 10 or something like that. And so I agree. I hope it is forever. Tomas, we're gonna go last with you, and then you're gonna start off the next one. So go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So for my moment, I'm going to go with Peru's qualification to the 2018 World Cup, which was the first time the nation qualified in 36 years. I was living in the country at the time, and, as a Peruvian, it was madness. That whole run to the World Cup, defeating teams that had, just objectively on paper better rosters, pulling off insane upsets, Ecuador on the road, Paraguay on the road, tying Argentina away, just so many moments. And the song I'm going to go with is Ain't No Mountain High Enough by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, because, in that song they talk about how, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no river wide enough, ain't no valley low enough. And it's kind of this idea that all these Peruvian fans, right, an entire nation, because, really for Peru and much of Latin America, the national soccer team is by far the most important team. It's more important than any sports league, and anything other related to sports. It's the national team. And so, after so long, right, 36 years, a lot of people had never seen, myself included, had never seen Peru in the World Cup in their life. despite all of that, the fan base, every time the team played, the stadium was packed. Every time, so for, the team to accomplish something, I mean, almost similar to a Cubs, right, winning after so long, the fans really stuck with it, right, and stayed supporting the team, and eventually when the team pulled through after so long, it was just, so much more meaningful.
Yeah, that I think is a very good finishing to the second question. So finally our third one, before moving on to national sports. This is a long one, it's a doozy, but just know that your answers don't have to necessarily be this in-depth, all right? So let's say an ownership conglomerate of everyone's, favorite people. Let's go Michael Schill, Willie the Wildcat, the Ryan family, everyone's favorite people with money. They decide that the big six sports, the MLB, MLS, NBA, NHL, NFL, and Canadian Football League, aren't good enough for their taste. I know y'all don't think this is true. It is. It's a big six in North America. If you look on Wikipedia,
North America.
in North America.
Okay, if you're concerned, North America.
And we're talking about men's sports exclusively. So obviously, I think in reality, the WNBA would probably be that sixth one. But you could choose a women's sport if you want. Anyway, their solution to this is they need a brand new major sports league. But unfortunately, they had like AI or something, I don't know. But their brainstorming machine broke down, so they need your help in designing a new league. What sport would be its focus? What would be the branding? What cities will get a team? Will cities even have a team? I don't know. The world is your oyster. I mean, if you want, you could even have oyster throwing as your sport. I don't really care. But we want your most succinct, your most polished, your most revolutionary, and of course, your most electric ideas. So what are you waiting for? Let's go. Tomas, you're going to get to go first on this one.
So when you think about sports, right, you want a spectacle, you want a show. And I think, if you want to really compete with the other major leagues in North America, you need something really unique. So I'm going to go with chess boxing. If you've never heard of chess boxing, it's essentially, it's a real sport, it's a hybrid sport, where essentially you play chess, you play a game of chess, and you also box, and you alternate. So you'll play a round of blitz chess, and then you'll do a round of boxing, and you keep going until either someone wins by checkmate in chess, or someone wins by knockout in boxing. So it's really, the best of both worlds, brains and brawn at the same time. I mean, could you imagine a packed Madison Square Garden for a chess boxing match? Now, of course, in terms of clubs, it wouldn't really function the same way as you would think like a franchise, like, the Chicago Bulls, for example. But what you could have is you could have like a team of, say, 3 or 4 chess boxers, right, for each city. So like New York, Chicago, LA, what have you, and they'll alternate, right? So like, because you can't possibly, doing a boxing match all the time is physically not attainable. So they'll alternate every week, right? And every week you have a match day, and it'll just be just pure chess boxing. You'll just have 1v1, 2 chess boxers going at it, both, on the table and in the ring. And I think that, it would be something that, I mean, could you imagine, like, the scenes, just, just the content that a chess boxing league would produce, the highlights, it could either be an insane checkmate or a crazy knockout. Like, I think it would really capture the imagination of a lot of people, and, I think for a lot of kids, too, watching that, it really gives you both kind of an academic sort of value to it, while also, showcasing pure athleticism.
All right, yeah, that's really unique. Matt, since you went first twice, we're going to go to Jonah next and then finish off with you for this last one.
Okay, I agree with Tomas that if we have this new league, it needs to be very unique. So I present the UBL. You may ask, what is the UBL? Well, it's the Underwater Basket Weaving League, of course.
Wait, what did you say?
Underwater Basket Weaving League, of course.
Basket weaving. Okay.
Yeah, of course. So, underwater basket weaving, it's pretty simple. You must weave baskets of different varieties underwater in time scenarios. Of course, simple. Everyone knows, because in this hypothetical world, no one's interested in putting a ball through a basket. They're interested in making their own basket.
Okay.
Each state will have its own team.
State.
Yes. But and the host city in this state must have a population smaller than 50,000, because we must bring economic surpluses to these cities. Because the UBL is going to be so big of a league that it is going to bring so much prosperity to the country. It is going to revive our now dead economy. It is going to just bring awesomeness everywhere that it goes. So you have some states like Minnesota and Michigan. They got a lot of lakes. You got more training grounds. So they might have.
What city for those?
This is up to the choosing. Like you might have Kalamazoo, Michigan,
Okay.
or you might have Moline, Illinois.
I think those towns might have more than 50,000 people.
I don't think Moline has more than 50,000.
Moline?
41,000.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Well, Kalamazoo, I think is bigger.
Kalamazoo's probably.
Yeah, but
It's besides the point.
there can be a bidding war between these cities because they want the prosperity and all these fans to come flock to their high school gyms to watch underwater basketball.
So would Evanston get one? Would that be the Illinois team?
I mean, they would have to get enough support from the state and from the other people in other cities.
Okay, very interesting. That's very. I like that. I like that, John. That's very out of the box, out of the basket, maybe.
Out of the pool.
Out of the. Sure, we can go with out of the pool. Finally, we'll go to Matt for our final answer of our first pick'em.
All right, so I went with good old Midwestern wrestling because obviously we know Big Ten, one of the best wrestling conference in the nation. Me and good pal Pierson Strandquist got to cover the Big Ten Wrestling Championships in North Carolina Arena with Anna Watson. So I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, the USWF, the United States Wrestling Foundation, because wrestling is such an underappreciated sport in the United States with a lot of potential. Obviously, you have the prosperity of fake wrestling with WWE making a deal with Netflix and SmackDown, having a brief stint on Fox, and now all of Elite Wrestling being featured on TBS. But what about the real wrestling world? I feel like that's something that's global that needs to be brought to the United States at the forefront. So I feel like you got 8 cities, you got the big 3 in New York, LA, and Chicago. But keeping with the Midwest theme, I think you could go to Iowa City. I think you could go to Pittsburgh. I mean, Pennsylvania is not Midwest, but close enough. You could go to Indianapolis. You could go to Akron, Ohio. And marketing would be huge because who doesn't like to watch their favorite Midwestern wrestlers? You get to keep up with Gable Steveson. You get to keep up with Stephen Buchanan, Matt Ramos. You don't have to watch Olympic trials. You can watch them all throughout an 8-month season wrestling throughout the country in the United States, and matches could take place inside of a lot of these collegiate arenas. They could take place inside of Welsh Ryan Arena. They could take place inside of the State Farm Center. So, and then when the playoffs come around, you can have a March Madness style bracket because upsets are so important in wrestling. I think a couple of years ago, I think the greatest Cinderella March Madness run was a guy named, I forget his name. He's gonna come back to me in a minute.
Jack Goki, Doug Eddard.
No, not Doug Eddard. But besides the point, wrestling upsets. There's nothing like it, and the national championships could be inside the United Center. I think we could have sell out for a professional wrestling national championships type of tournament inside the United Center. So that's my proposal for the new
All right. I mean, yeah, all good picks. I think it's time to, decide the winners, and we always have to select winners because everything has to be a competition. So
Hey, Calvin, though, I think we're going to have a new format for choosing this, actually. I think, would you
go
like
for it. Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, unlike the sports voice of the past, where it's a collective vote, Calvin and I will both vote, and if it's 1-1, the person who didn't get voted for will get the deciding vote. So, like, for example, let's say in the first question, let's say theoretically it was Matt and Jonah, then Tomas, and we both voted for him, then Tomas would get the deciding vote. So does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so I think starting off with the first question, to remind our viewers what we had, the question was about kind of a March Madness Cinderella-like player that wasn't a March Madness player, right? And so for that, Matt gave us 2019 World Series Juan Soto, Tomas gave us 2025 February and March Eastern Conference Player of the Month, Kobe White, and then Jonah gave us 2018 Bears 6th-round pick, second in tackles, Denny Trevathan. I can go first. This is a tough one. Y'all gave really good answers, and I think all three of you kind of tried to pick your audience correctly. I think if it wasn't obvious from my reaction, I'm going to go with Tomas here. I think that it was the most creative one. It was the most recent one. It's what's on my mind right now. And I think, man, Kobe... No, but he was also robbed of Most Improved Player, and I think that's a good one because it's kind of like a comeback story of a Cinderella team who might have missed out for like 30 years or something. So that's my vote. Calvin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's all good answers here. I actually think I'm going to go a different answer, though. I'm going to go with Jonah just because I think Danny Trevathan, when I think of March Madness hero, I think of someone who's a little more under the radar. And I don't think Juan Soto is under the radar enough. I like where you're going, but honestly, like from that team, from the Nationals team, I would have picked somebody like Howie Kendrick because I think that's a guy where you're like, if you'd picked Howie Kendrick, you would have had my vote in a second. Juan Soto, 100%,
That is what I thought you were going to say,
100%
too.
a great answer there. But I think to me, Howie Kendrick was also just like the guy who, the older player out of his prime, really just elevated the team and came in the clutch. I think Kobe White, like he's not a superstar, but he is like a star enough to where like he feels sort of like a Cinderella, but at the same time, like, he's kind of one of the top players in the NBA. To me, I think Danny Trevathan, coming from what you said, 6th round pick, that's the best choice out of the three, although they were all good and all like I considered to vote for. So I guess that means for this first question, Matt, you're going to have the tiebreaker. Do you vote for Tomas or Jonah?
All right, I'm gonna try to keep my saltiness out of this as much as possible. But I think I gotta go with Jonah. I think it's not that Tomas's pick was bad. Tomas's pick was a very good pick, but Danny Trevathan is just an insane pull, and I think he highlighted it really well, and I gotta give him the win on that one. I don't think anybody's really beaten that.
Jonah gets the win on question 1. We're going to go to question 2. I'll do my vote first this time. I actually think, again, we got some good variety in songs here. We got Not Like Us and Forever, and then also Ain't No Mountain High Enough, which is a fun juxtaposition of 3 that you have here. But again, all really good answers. I'm going to vote for someone different this time. I'm voting for Tomas. I think that his answer in terms of, Peru World Cup qualification, I think the song fit the moment the best. In my opinion, you gave really, really good justification for why that song works. Plus, I like the song. Like, it's still a banger. Like, I'd still like play it on my playlist. Like, it's a good song, and it really fits like a long struggle for World Cup qualification, like you described. I think it's a really good pick.
Okay, so again to recap, Tomas was the Peru World Cup qualification. Jonas was Game 7 Cubs versus Indians. Matt was the UMBC upset with Not Like Us. Viewers at home, you might think as a Cubs fan, I would go with Jonah. But unfortunately, I hope that ring is not forever and that the Cubs win another one, hopefully within the next few years or so. That's what we're hoping for. And so with that, I'm actually going to go with Matt. I think that it really fit. Again, it's not like I'm just recent, but also like I feel like Not Like Us does fit this team. I think Matt gave good justification between UMBC and Virginia. And I really like Jonah. It was really good that you did the lyrics. But I think in this case, for me, I just think in terms of explanation, the other two gave better. So we're going to go with them too. So, Jonah, that means you get the second deciding vote of the new Sports Voice, I guess.
I do really like Matt's pick, and it fits very well. But I just like the vibes that I just felt. I could like hear the emotion when Tomas was explaining his. Like I could just understand like that feeling of like a liberation of sorts from the depths of failure. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Tomas.
All right, well, there we go. There you have it. Now we have Tomas having won the second pick'em. Jonah won the first one with Danny Trevathan. My apologies for not recapping the question properly on question 2, but for question 3, I'll do so better. This was about the ownership conglomerate forming a new league. It would be focusing on sports, focusing on branding, focusing on having franchises. You could literally have anything. The world is your oyster. It could have been oyster throwing, which nobody ended up saying, but there were 3 really good options. So, Pierson, who did you have here?
Okay, I think that out of all of these, chess boxing and wrestling are things that exist, and I don't know if underwater basket weaving does exist, but I mean, man, that is just the most creative one. I love the idea of having these like different 50,000 cities. I think that's so random and super fun. Now, Jonah, I did vote for you, but I was really hoping when you mentioned Minnesota and towns under 50,000, I was thinking you were going to say Strandquist, Minnesota, which does exist. For a matter of fact, if you look it up, that is a real town in Minnesota. I don't know who it is. Probably, maybe after me, I don't know. But I'm going to stay humble. I'm going to say that there's some really, really great Strandquist of the past. But either way, Jonah still gets my vote regardless.
Well, this is going to make it easy, not a tie-breaking vote. Jonah is the first winner of Pick'em in the new era. I'm going to go with Jonah as well. So that means he takes 2 Pick'ems as a whole, one by tie-break, one by unanimous 2-0 decision. I really thought, like Pierson said, I mean, you said it all, underwater basket weaving was something that I think came out of nowhere more than the other 2, and really, like, in terms of establishing something new and revolutionary, it did the best job of it. I really liked everyone's explanations. In general, I thought all the Pick'ems were great. But yeah, give me Jonah for this one. So that's going to be Jonah winning this first episode of Pick'em, and I think I like how we have this with tiebreakers. I mean, like we said, always have to have a winner in everything, every single time, and so it's great to be able to decide. And yeah, we're gonna move on to national sports talk. Pierson, do you want to bring us into the final segment?
Yeah, we're going to go quickly here. We do have permission to go a little bit after 9, so we do get a little bit of time to talk. But really, we got to keep these answers quick if we want to get to at least a few things. So starting off, if it's not obvious, we're going to talk about a little bit of college basketball. I think that with our friends at Her Take, Chelsea and Brielle, I know Tomas and Jonah were on that show, and I think they kind of talked a lot about the national championship. So I think we're going to skip over that since we already heard their thoughts and move on to men's basketball, starting off with the fact that, wow, what an amazing Final Four we just had. 4 1 seeds for the first time in a long time. And, both games did not disappoint. Florida beating Auburn 79-73, and then Houston coming back from down almost 18 in the second half at one point. An 11-1 run by Houston at the end to beat Duke, who was probably the overwhelming favorite in this tournament. And man, Cooper Flag missed a big shot. I mean, what are your guys' reactions initially?
I was just watching the final sequences of that game, and I'm like, wow, Duke looks outmatched here. Their dominance from the entire season seemed to fade in an instant, and Kelvin Sampson just had all the right answers for what John Schreier was cooking up.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, entering the Final Four, seeing Duke, so dominant throughout the tournament, I thought that was a concern, right? They didn't really have a true scare. Arizona a little bit in the Sweet 16, but not a true scare in the same way that Houston faced against Purdue, right? Or Florida faced against Texas A&M. So I think that, or Texas Tech, I should say. So I think that, that lack of crunch time, experience really hurt Duke in the clutch. And all credit to Houston, all credit to Florida. And while it may have been a little boring not having many Cinderellas, the Final Four has really lived up to the hype.
No, this is not recency bias, but Duke versus Houston will go down as a top 5 Final Four game of all time. It's one of the greatest ever. Could possibly be the greatest ever when we reconvene in a couple of years. But I read something online that Houston clocked mile times very recently. You want to know what the slowest mile time was on the Houston roster?
Wasn't it? I feel like
Yeah, it was
wasn't this
5:45?
5:45.
It wasn't that like the 6'8", 245 guy?
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane.
Dude, that's crazy.
Houston held
Yeah.
Duke to 1 basket in the final 10 minutes.
Listen, I mean,
That doesn't credit.
Nerves.
If it wasn't clear enough that Houston has the best defense in the nation, that game has to tell you Houston has the best defense in the nation. And I think we're going to get to this now, but
yeah, go ahead. Say a
in the
prediction.
national
Do you have a prediction?
championship, I think Houston takes it.
Okay.
I don't think Houston's offense is better than Florida's. I just think Houston's defense is just too dominant.
I mean, they do say defense wins championships, and I think arguably conditioning does as well, as was kind of clear in this one. Tomas and Jonah, really quickly, do you just have a quick pick? You just say the name.
Yeah, quick pick. I'm going to go with Florida. I think Walter Clayton Jr. has just been nothing short of dominant.
Jonah?
I think Houston will win the first half by 25, and Florida and Walter Clayton will find a way to win in a majestical second half, because the past 2 games, that's just what Walter Clayton has done.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm going to go with Houston as well. I agree with Matt. I think defense wins championships. I'm a little biased because have some money related there, but regardless of that, And Calvin, who do you think?
I'm going to go with Florida. I think Walter
Okay.
Clayton Jr. is too much to stop. I think we saw out of Thomas Houck in the second half when he really stepped up. We'll see more of that in the national championship. I think he's not gonna fall apart. He's gonna have a good game. Florida's gonna win. It's gonna be a thriller, though. I mean, I didn't think Houston was gonna beat Duke, but now that they have, I think it's gonna be thrilling.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. Sports Voice has decided 3-2 that Florida will be the national champion. So I don't know if we'll have these guests next week, but we shall see if that's true. Now, really quickly, this dominance from 1 seeds, we haven't seen last time this happened was 2008, 4 1 seeds. Back then, people were talking about it becoming the norm. It wasn't. But do we think this time, considering how good these teams are, considering the transfer portals, all the teams in March Madness who got knocked out, their coaches, their players, even their student managers, right, are being transferred over. So do we think this dominance from top seeds will become the norm in the future or not? Maybe go 1 or 2 answers in this.
I know Pierson and I had a long conversation about this a couple weeks ago. I feel like my hope is that it is not the norm and that we'll still occasionally see some upsets, but I fear that this will be a regular thing. And maybe, like what we saw at the end of the Duke game, there will be some teams that are working specifically to find the issues within other squads and try to take them down. Some 1 seeds, some may say, and we can see some maybe like 4 or 5 seed upsets. But otherwise, I feel like this will be relatively the norm.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar. I certainly hope not, but it is starting to become a situation where the rich get richer, and you just have these top programs taking in so much talent. I mean, it reminds me almost of like the European club structure, where you have these 10 to 15 super clubs, and everyone else can't really compete with the money that these teams have. So it's trending in that direction, which I think is worrisome. I think it'll take a while for that to really take hold, but for now, yeah, I think that's what we're looking at.
Honestly, I think this year might be an anomaly, and next year I think it'll go back to normal with the bigger upsets that we're more accustomed to, and I don't think NIL is going to really take its effect for another 5 years or so, and then it'll start to become the norm where the rich are too rich for these mid-major programs to keep up with, and they have too many weapons, and the 1 seeds start having cakewalks to the national championship. But for now, I just think I'm not going to take this year too seriously.
Fair enough. I think those are good. You want to put the last part of it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll lead into the last part. I agree. I mean, I think, you can't read too much out of 1 year. At the same time, though, there are some very concerning signs. But we would be remiss if we didn't get to this last part of the show. This will be the last topic we talk about today here on Sports Voice. Lots to come next week. Potentially some golf coverage, MLB, different stuff.
The Masters going on.
The Masters is going on next week, so we're going to have to touch on that at least a little bit. First of the 4 major tournaments for golfers in the United States and throughout the world. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. Lots more to cover on Sports Voice next week, so make sure you tune in here on YouTube or WNUR 89.3 FM in HD1 Evanston, Chicago. But last topic, the NHL. We don't really talk about the NHL much on Sports Voice unless Dylan's on, which he's not this week, but we have to talk about it this week because not only is it one of the 4 major sports, but we saw perhaps the most major record ever of all time getting broken today in the NHL. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Washington Capitals' Alex Ovechkin has been chasing Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal record for .894 for so long.
The great one, yeah.
The great one.
The greater one?
The great 8? Well, Ovechkin's the great 8.
Yeah.
And so now, is the great 8 better than the great 1 is the question. I mean, he has the higher number. So that's the question we got to figure out. But he had 2 goals against the Blackhawks with Wayne Gretzky in attendance and tied the record at home. And he had a number of shots on goal in the 3rd period and had a chance to get number 895, break the record. Didn't do it at home. He went on the road. Some Cavs fans were kind of rooting for him not to get it against the Islanders so that he could come back. I think they're facing the Avalanche next and that they could go score his goal at number 895. But he broke the record versus the Islanders very early in the game. The call was electric. The scene was electric. The celebration was electric. And the thing is, 10 years ago, I don't think people expected this to happen. Gretzky's points record is unbreakable, for sure. He has so many more points in terms of goals and assists combined than the next highest player. There's even a statistic where if you take away Wayne Gretzky's goals, he's still the all-time points leader, which is kind of crazy just because he had more assists than anyone has goals and assists combined in history in the NHL. But again, the point is Gretzky's goal record seemed unbreakable, but it was. Ovechkin ended up putting tons of goals year after year. Even at age 39, he's still producing. Question for you guys now is, will anyone ever come close to this in the future, to this kind of longevity? Thoughts on the record, and will anyone come close ever again? Some quick answers here, but let's start with Matt.
No chance. Ovechkin and Gretzky are now 1 and 2, far away. It's basically Jordan and LeBron, ice hockey version. Nobody's touching it. And snuff's dead.
Wait, Matt, are you an Islanders fan or are you a Rangers fan?
I'm an Islanders fan.
Oh, okay, so it happened against your team. How does that feel?
I can't hate on greatness.
No, dude, that's how I felt with the Blackhawks. I was honestly hoping that it got broken against the Hawks because it was like Calvin said, at home, and also just the Blackhawks being a part of some history. And they were regardless. I get that for sure. Tomas, what do you think?
I think people said, after Gretzky's record that it was unbreakable, and here we are. So I'll never say never. Hey, Connor Bedard's out there. He's pretty young. But
Connor Bedard, no shot.
But just in general, I think, with athletes' longevity becoming longer and longer as medicine gets more advanced, I don't think it's impossible for it to get broken.
For sure.
Especially considering that Gretzky's just got broken.
Yeah, I agree. We're seeing, every year in every sport, we always have generational prospects, which may be an overused term, but I think just the quality of talent in so many leagues is getting better. And, yeah, longevity medicine is just improving over time. So I won't say for certain that someone or 4 guys are going to come down and score 900 goals, but I think it's possible. I don't think it's an unbreakable record.
No, for sure. I think that it becomes interesting with this type of thing because it really is dependent on people we don't know about, like factors we don't know about. I think in the current NHL, probably no one touches it, but that doesn't mean that we won't have another Alex Ovechkin coming in. I mean, nobody, I think, thought that he would be the one to break the record either. And so I think he's been chasing it his entire career. It's always been like, maybe he'll get there, but he'll probably retire before he does. He's kept it up, and that's kind of what it will take, honestly, kind of longevity. I think that in terms of this, maybe the next one we see is Bond's home run record. I think that one could definitely be in the age of baseball. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of tech related to that. We're seeing a lot more homers this year. Maybe the torpedo bats help. Aaron Judge potentially. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see there. I think one that will never be broken. I think one is probably Cal Ripken's 2,632 games played consecutively. That will never ever get broken. I think that's one we know for sure. So I mean, having these conversations, we'll kind of see. But with that being said, unfortunately, we will not be getting to some of our bonus topics, MLB, PGA, as we mentioned, and Major League Rugby was one that Jonah really wanted to talk about. Unfortunately, maybe we'll talk about that next week. It has been a great run in our first show. Thank you so much to Matt, Tomas, and Jonah being a part of our debut. We've had a lot of fun here today. Calvin, any last words?
I mean, you're going to hear a lot more from us next week. So tune in next week, the week after that for the next year. Whenever we're in school here, we're going to be having Sports Block, and we're really, really excited to kick off this new era of Sports Voice with a bang. New segments coming too. It's not just going to be the segments that you've heard before. We're going to mix it up, rotate some in, still have the good old pick'ems, the good old drafts, questions of the week, stuff like that, but we're going to mix in some new stuff. So you better tune in to find out what it is because it's going to be electric.
You don't want to miss it. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.